understand also. So all of you keep heading. The today's concept is we are going to study what? All of you? It is friction. Okay. So now let us discuss what do you mean by this friction and everything. So we all knows that whatever the object is moving in a surface, if I take for example, a ball is rolling in a surface in a particular direction. So without knowing, so there is no visible force applied to us. There is no person is catching the ball or stopping the ball, but still the ball, after traveling a certain distance, automatically the ball will come to rest. Am I right or wrong, everybody? All of you? So we will say that we all studied from 8th class. The ball which will comes to rest after traveling certain distance is due to the something. Anybody can tell? What is that? The speed will, yes, the speed of the body will be keep on decreases. Am I right, Gokul? The speed of the body is keep on decreasing, so that after traveling certain distance, the body will comes to rest. Well, because of, we will study, what is that, everybody? Because of frictional force, or we can say force of friction. Force of friction, which is exerted by what? Force of friction, which is exerted by, due to the what, guys? Due to earth. Am I right or wrong? Please respond, everybody. All of you? Who is exerting the frictional force? I am asking you the question. Earth only. Correct or not? That is what. So, when a ball rolls over a surface, it will slow down and comes to rest after traveling a certain distance. According to the Newton's first law. What is Newton's first law? Anybody can tell? According to the Newton's first law, second part, anybody can tell? According to the Newton's first law, the body which is in continuous motion, like when the body which is in uniform motion in
Good morning, sir.
remains continuous its motion unless it is experienced by an what?
External force.
Now, this Newton's first law is modified according to this example. As the ball rolls over a ground after traveling certain distance, automatically this ball will come to the rest. Means the speed of the bodies keep on decreases, or velocity of the bodies keep on decreasing due to the force of friction which is exerted by earth. So here, according to the Newton's first law, ball cannot be come to rest on its own. Am I right or wrong? So there is a force which is making the ball to come to rest. That is the force we used to call. What is the name of that force, everybody? Yes, please. What is the force we used to call? According to the Newton's first law,
force.
yes, the ball cannot come to rest. Ball cannot come to rest on its own. So there is an external force. There should be a force which opposes the motion of the ball over the surface in contact. So wherever it is coming in contact, over the surface in contact, there should be a force which is opposing the motion. And this force always must act same direction of motion or opposite direction of motion. Anybody?
Opposite direction.
Opposite direction of motion. So because of this force is acting opposite direction of motion, it makes the body accelerating or makes the body deacceleration. Everybody, makes the body accelerating or deaccelerating. Everybody respond.
Deacceleration.
Deacceleration. It makes the balls to cause deacceleration. That force only known as, what is the force we used to call as? The force which makes the ball to deaccelerate wherever it is contacting, that is what we used to call as. What is the force we used to call, everybody? Which is known as force of
Frictional force.
Force of friction, or we can say frictional force. That is why we will say the friction is the force which always opposes relative motion of one body over the other. Clear, everybody? So frictional force is a what force? It is a force which will opposes, means one object is trying to move over the another object, another surface. One object is trying to move over the another surface. That is what we used to call as relative motion. What is to call everybody? All of you? Relative motion. Understand, Amma? When one object or one surface is trying to move over another surface, we used to call as what motion, everybody? We used to call as
Relative motion.
Relative motion.
always the friction is the force which opposes the relative motion. Means it will act what direction? The relative motion of the body in this direction. So it will always act opposes and it will act opposite direction. Means this is the direction of frictional force. Do you all understand, all of you?
Sir, can you please say about relative motion again?
Relative motion means one surface is trying to move over another surface. That is what we used to call as relative motion. Clear, Mari?
Yes, sir.
Suppose if both surfaces are moving together, that is not called as relative motion. Of course, by that time is also there is a friction. Understanding? But they are not called as relative motion. Understanding? Suppose both the surfaces are moving at a time. Clear? Understanding? They are not, it is in relative motion. Means one surface is trying to move over another surface. That is the motion we used to call as. What motion we used to say? We used to call as, everybody, relative motion.
Relative.
So always the frictional force or the force of friction which opposes the relative motion of one body over the another body. So that is what we used to call as frictional force. So frictional force will make deacceleration or acceleration, everybody. It will make deacceleration of the body. So always it will act opposite direction. Clear, everybody? Relax what? Opposite direction to the direction of motion. If the direction of motion is forward, then frictional force will act in what direction? Everybody. It will act in backward direction.
Backward.
Yeah. So that is what you have to remember. Now, so for example, relative motion, Kishore, you are walking on the surface. Surface is one surface and you are over moving in that. So you are trying to move forward, your relative motion. Do you understand, Kishore? Your relative motion over that. For example, you are trying to move an object over the bench. Suppose your notebook is on the bench, you are trying to move it. So bench is moving on the surface of book is moving on the surface of bench. So that book and bench are relative motion. One is moving forward. If one is moving forward means automatically another one is appears to be moving what? Everybody. Another one is appears to be moving forward. See that. So if you notice it, this is one surface. Let me take surface one, all of you. And this is another surface. Now, one surface is trying to pass over the another surface. So that is what motion of the body in forward direction. So then, between the surfaces, there is a force which is always opposing the relative motion. So that is the force we used to call as. What we used to call, guys, all of you? We used to call as frictional force. Understand that? Everyone, please respond. Now, so the force which is applied or the object which is trying to move is called as F. And the frictional force always will represent with the what letter? Frictional force. Yes, please. Frictional force is represented with what letter?
F.
Small f. Small f. Applied force is capital F and frictional force is always small f. So that is what about the frictional force, right? The friction is the force. Friction is the force. Friction is the force which opposes what motion, guys? Nivedan, engage. Which opposes
Relative motion.
relative motion. Who is that making sound? Relative motion of one body over the what? Over the other. So that is what we used to call as frictional force. So frictional force will make the body deaccelerating or accelerating? Deacceleration always. And always it will act what? direction opposite to the direction of motion. It will act in a direction opposite to the direction of motion. Now, what is the cause of friction? All of you observe. What is that, everybody? What is the cause of friction? Okay. Now, there is a particular part, I will highlight it, all of you check it. This is the part where both the surfaces are in contact. Am I right or wrong? Everybody, please respond. Yes or no? All of you. So this is the surface where both the surfaces are contacting area is this one. Now, if this particular part, if I see through the microscope, if I see through the what, everybody? Through the, yes, please respond. Microscope. Of course, if I see normally, they may be appears to be like regular, like a plain surface. But if I see through the microscope, all of you observe very carefully. So I can see there is a irregularities between the surfaces. Have you checked it, everybody? All of you? Please respond. So there is not even surface. It is uneven surface. There is up and down. The surfaces in contact, wherever the surfaces are in contact, if you see that particular area through the microscope, the surfaces having many ridges and depressions. Do you remember that, everyone? This is what unevens. That is what unevenness we used to call UN. Write it. UNEVENNESS. Unevenness. Together, single word. Unevenness. Because of what? This is ups and downs. This ups and downs only we used to call ridges and depressions. Ridges and we used to call it as what? Speak, everybody. We used to call it as depressions. Okay.
Yes,
So I will teach you, Mari. See that here, all of you observe. Suppose if it is like this, this is what we used to call as ridge, and this down is called as what? Everybody, depression. Okay, ma, all of you. So these ridges and depressions, making them surface is what? Even or unevenness? Unevenness. But still they appears to be what? If you look at without microscope, they appears to be what? Even though they appears, respond. How they are appearing?
unevenly.
No, they are appearing smooth, Mari. There looks like a smooth here. But if you see through the microscope only, you are seeing that it is unevenness. Understand what I am saying? Clear? Even though, understanding? Though they appear, though they appear to be smooth, if I see through the microscope, I can find it. Many ridges and depressions are there. So, when the surfaces of two different bodies are brought in contact, when two surfaces of different bodies are brought in together, means they will contact with other, clear everybody, one another. Their irregularities, this unevenness only we used to call as what? Irregularities. Please speak. What is that, everyone? We used to call as irregularities. So these irregularities, they will interlock. They will interlock each other. Have you noticed it here? They will they will attach each other. They will interlock each other. So this interlocking. So, and then once they will interlock, what will happen? And this
The
opposes
body tries to come to rest.
interlock only opposes what? Opposes a motion called as what motion?
Relation
Opposes
motion.
relative motion of one body over the what? Over the other. So that is only we used to called as that opposing relative motion only we used to called as what force we used to call, everybody? We used to called as frictional force. Now, do you all understand what is the cause of friction? Everybody, please speak.
Yes, sir.
Yes. What is the cause of friction?
Yes, sir.
All of you. Cause of friction. What is the cause of friction? Even though the surfaces are appears to be smooth, but still they have irregularities. Only we can notice that irregularities when we see through the what?
Microscope.
Okay. So then these irregularities will intersect and they will they will oppose the motion. Which motion? Relative motion. So that is what is the cause of friction. Okay, guys, everybody understand? All of you? That is what. So please draw the diagrams and also make it everything very clearly. Now, so with this, we are going to study. Now you understand what is friction. Anybody having any doubt? Please let me know. So with this, we are going to start types of friction. What is that, everyone? Types of friction. Now, can you tell me how we can overcome the friction? Any one of you. How we can overcome the friction? By applying?
Lubricant.
No.
Lubricant.
I am not saying
By
that what are the ways to reduce the friction or increase the friction. Generally, how you can overcome the friction? By
Sir, by
applying.
having
By
smooth
applying more
surface.
force.
Yeah.
So smoothen your surface.
Force has to be applied.
More force.
Don't be very unrealistic. Be normal. If you want to if you want to overcome the friction, what has to be done? Force has to be
To
applied.
apply more relative force.
The applied force must be greater than the frictional force. That's all. Am I right or wrong? Yes. Yeah. Be very simple. Don't be very complicated yourself. I know you studied in 8th class. Making the how to reduce the friction, how to increase the friction. We don't know how to make. That is all you studied already long back and you forgot it also. But now you have to work it. Okay. So now next what we are going to study, everybody? Types of
friction. Sure.
So there are 3 types of friction, namely, even 11th class you will study the same thing. The first type of friction, static friction. Okay, very good. Second type of friction is kinetic friction. So kinetic also we can call it as
Dynamic friction.
dynamic friction, not dynamic friction. And the third one is called as rolling friction. So that is what, because kinetic friction will be separating into 2. One is basically in lower classes you study like that only. Am I right or wrong, everybody? Static friction, and there is a one more friction which you will get afterwards. That is what we used to call as limiting friction. What is the friction we used to say? Everybody?
Limiting friction.
Limiting friction. Okay. So first you let us study this, then we will go with that. So shall we start now, all of you? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So all of you keep reading now. Static friction first. One is missing. Who is that missing, Mari? Can you check it list? Somebody is missing. I don't know who is that. So please all of you keep reading. What is the heading? What is your heading now?
Static friction.
Static friction. Okay. So listen very carefully. So what do you mean by static friction? Anybody can remember from the 8th class? Anything? You remember? Yes, please. What do you mean by static friction? Any one of you? At least try to answer. At least when we can say static friction, can you guess it? When the object is in what?
Motion.
Motion.
Sir.
Huh? Mari?
Pranav is missing, sir.
Yeah, okay. So can you tell me what is that? Anybody? Yes, please.
Surface allows the body to move.
No. Static. Or you are in a static mode, or you are in a stationary mode. You can say
Initial
that.
state of motion.
Static friction. When you can expect static friction will be accepted. Anybody?
Sir, when your body is sitting resting.
Yes. Body is experiencing what? Everybody?
Rest.
Rest. So then when the two surfaces are in contact each other and one body is in state of like placed above the another body. So then we will say, what is the friction? Let us discuss it. So let us imagine this is the bench now. All of you observe. This is the table. So I have placed something on the table called as wooden block. What is I have kept it, everybody?
Wooden block.
Wooden block. Okay. Now, be very careful. If this is what you should understand now. So place a wooden block on table. Next, fasten a string to the block, and to the free end of the string, attach a scale pan. What is a scale pan? Theriyuma, everybody, scale pan means. Scale pan means, we know that is what tarasu. Enna tarasu? Taras theriyuma?
Yes,
sir.
sir.
It's weight.
That is only called as scale pan. For measuring the mass, we studied correct. For measuring mass,
Yes,
what
sir.
we'll use? Measuring mass will
Beam
use
balance.
beam balance. That beam balance rendu plate irka. That is the one plate. So that is what you have to put it. Yes, Lingesh is saying. So what you have to do it? We have to place a wooden block on a table. Next, tie a string to the block or fasten a string to the block, and another free end of the string is must be attached to the scale pan. Okay. Now the string is passed over a pulley. What is the name of the pulley? Here they have taken. This is called as pulley. What is
P.
that?
P.
P. So we have to pass the string over the pulley. Now, slowly start adding the masses. Add a small weight to the scale pan, which would tends to move the block but not set in a motion. Do you all understand, everybody? You need to
Yes, sir.
add some mass. The block will never move. Some other mass you add, so that still you cannot see that motion is there. It's not move. It should not make motion, but it has to ready to move. So I have added certain weight here. So I notice that when I keep on adding certain weights, at a certain situation, I notice that the wooden block is ready to move. That is what it is, tends to move. At that situation, you should not make move. You have to just find, if you add little bit more mass, then fastly the wooden block will start moving forward. Do you all understand what I am saying, Agalya? So you have to add a mass in such a way that you have to make the body is almost ready to move. That is what we can say, tends to move the block, but not set in motion. You should not make set in motion, but you have to make tends to move. So means in the sense of body is still in what? It is not tends to, it is tends to move, but it is not set in motion. Means body is still in what? Still in motion or still at
Rest.
rest. So you have to make it here statement, keep it in mind. So we have to add the weights to the scale pan. I am adding the weights continuously such that what will happen? It needs to make, tends to move the wooden block, tends to move the block, but it should not be set in what? But not set it in
Right, add mass only, no, sir.
weight you can write, or mass you can write, whatever it is, Mari. Okay, because it is a gravity. Gravity is acting. We have to find force, correct, Mari? It is a frictional force. That is what. Do you understand it? Yes, Lingesh.
Yes,
Understand, Lingesh? When it is tends to move only, if it is motion only, relative motion. Am I right or wrong, Lingesh? It is not ready to move. It is ready to move. So at that time, I have to stop it, adding the weight. So if you notice it here, still the block is ready at rest. If I add little bit more mass, then fastly the block will start moving and it will come down. Is it okay, guys? Everybody clear what I'm saying? All of you?
Sir.
So here a body tends to move, but it is not said to be in motion. Means body is still at what? Body is still at
Rest.
rest. That is because of, what is the because of? Because of a force called as, what force it is?
Static friction.
The frictional force, which does not allow the body to slide over another. It is tends to move, but it is not moving. That is the friction. That is the frictional force we used to call. What frictional force we used to say? Everybody.
Static friction.
Okay. So write it. So the force, the frictional force, which does not allow the body, which the frictional force which does not allow the body to slide over another slide over another ANOTH here. Another is called, what is this called as? Everybody, who is to called as static friction. Clear, everybody? All of you understand? So static friction come into play whenever the two surfaces are what? Motion or stationary? Stationary, understanding, relative to each other. So that is why we will speak. Static friction is existed. Two surfaces are in contact each other, but they are what actually? They are not in relative motion. They are stationary. Understanding?
It will only tends to move, but it will
Yes,
not
they are
move.
tends to move, but it's not moving. Are you clear? That is what? Stationary, and they are relative to each other. They are tends to move. There is a tendency of moving, but they are not moving. So that is the force we used to called as frictional force. Everybody clear, guys? That frictional force is only called as what frictional force, everyone?
Static friction.
Static friction. Clear? So that is what. So if you are not applying the external force in the direction of the plane of the surfaces are in contact, the friction balances the applied forces. So if you are not applying the sufficient amount of force, all of you remember that. So the external force being applied to the body in always the direction of a plane of where the surfaces are in contact. So and applied force must be more than this static friction. So if you apply little bit more mass, then the applied force is actually is downward direction. So it is greater than the static friction. Then only the object will start what? The object will start begins to move. Clear, everybody? So if I just increase the weight of a pan gradually, so what will happen? The block will just start moving, begins to move. So that weight corresponding to the maximum value of static friction. It means a tendency to move. Just if I add little mass, the body will start moving. So the mass which makes the body to tendency to move, that is the weight. We should not speak about mass, weight, because that is experiencing the gravitational force. That weight is equals to what friction, everybody? That weight is only equals to what friction? Fastly.
Static friction.
Static friction.
Friction. Clear? So that is what. So just allow the body to slide on another body. So that maximum friction is only called as, what is to call, everybody? Yes? Static friction. All of you understanding? Now, there is a very interesting thing and very important thing now I will speak. All of you observe very carefully. For example, experimentally I am saying you, I will take that. For example, I add first 10 Newton weight. How much weight, Amma? All of you? 10 Newton. I notice that body is in state of rest. So means, what is the static friction by the time? Static friction is equals to 10 Newton. Am I right or wrong?
10 Newton.
I increase the weight plus 5 Newton. So that static friction will become how much? 15 Newton.
15 Newton.
I increase the again plus 10 Newtons. Then static friction increases how much?
25 Newton.
25
25 Newton.
Now, I notice that if my weight becomes just 1 Newton, if I add, my body moves. My body moves. Means, what is my static friction? Maximum static friction is how much? What is my maximum static friction? All of you. Maximum static friction. Maximum static friction is actually is equals to 25 Newtons. Am I right or wrong? 10 Newtons also static friction only. 15 Newtons also static friction only. But what is the maximum static friction? 25
25
newtons. Example. If
Newton.
my weight increases little more than that also, then automatically body tends to what? Is from state of rest to state of
Motion.
motion. So that is what? The maximum friction where the body is not moving, but it is what? It is tends to move. That is the static friction. That maximum static friction only we used to called as limiting friction. I told you correct. There is a word called as limiting friction. Understand, Mr. Nivedan?
Yes, sir.
Yes, everybody. So
Yes,
static
sir.
friction is not constant.
Yes, sir.
Static friction is always variable. But the maximum static friction we used to call as what friction we used to call? Everybody. When the static friction
Limiting
is
friction.
maximum, Fs is maximum, that is only called as F limiting. What we used to call? Everybody?
F limiting.
F limiting. Understanding? So the maximum static friction is called as what? Limiting friction. So static friction is remains constant or variable? Everybody, very important point. Static friction is remains constant or variable? It is
Variable.
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 Understanding? It is not remains
Variable.
constant. Understand, Shivani, Agalya, Alfin, everybody?
Yes,
So
sir.
the maximum static friction we used to call as what? Everyone?
25 Newton.
Limiting.
Limiting.
That is example, girl. Who is that saying 25 newtons? Nonsense. That is example I am saying. Understanding? It is not same. Okay. It may be something. Just for example, I am saying. Are you clear, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
So
sir.
that is what we can say. Frictional force always acts opposite direction to the motion of the body. If the body is moving in a forward direction, the frictional force will act in what direction? All of you. Backward direction. Okay.
Backward
That is
direction.
what we will say. Frictional force always acts in a direction opposite to the motion of the body. So this is what about the static friction. Do you all understanding, guys? What is static friction means? So whenever the objects are in state of rest, so and the surfaces are in contact each other. So what is the friction between them? When the two surfaces are contact each other, what is the friction between them and the area of contact? Area of contact, there is a friction called as what friction, guys? Static friction. Clear?
friction.
And the static friction is not same. It is always variable. Clear, Nivedan, Mr. Lingesh, Kishore?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Sir.
That is now. Let us see that loss of limiting friction. As I told you, maximum static friction only we used to call as what? Limiting friction. When
Limiting
this
friction.
static friction is maximum, anybody can tell? It is not moving, but it is tends to move. It is ready to move. That is what we used to call as static friction. Do you all understanding, everybody? All of you? Yes?
Sir.
Now, if you
Yes,
want
sir.
to say, for example, your car is in state of rest. Now your car wheels are in contact with the ground. Now, what is the friction present here between them? All of you? Static friction. Clear? So that may be some X newtons. Now, I start my engine. I rising the car little bit, but brake, not moving the car. It ready to move, but it's not ready to move. It's not moving. Do you understand, Mari, what I'm saying? Everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, if I sit inside the car is not started. Now, static friction will increases or decreases. My weight is also increasing, so that more interlocking, so that more friction will increase. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now static friction again changes. Now I started my car. I put one leg on the brake and another leg is slowly pressing the accelerator. See that? I am pressing the accelerator, but I am not moving. So that my static friction is almost maximum. I am ready to move. I am tense to move, but I am not moving. So as soon as if I release the brake, suddenly we'll start moving forward. Am I right or wrong? Yes? Please
Yes, sir.
respond. That is what.
sir.
So the maximum friction which is possessed by the bodies when they are in contact, that is what, when they tends to move, that is the friction we used to call as what? Everybody? We used to call
Static
as?
friction.
No, maximum static friction called as what?
Limiting friction.
Okay, meeting is going to end. Join back. We'll study laws of limiting friction, and then we'll wind up the today's class. And then tomorrow we'll study experimental verification of laws of limiting friction, and then we will go with the next type of friction called as sliding or
Kinetic.
kinetic friction. Sliding friction, also called as dynamic friction, also called as kinetic friction. Okay.
The dynamic means the cause of,
Um,
you know,
Yes.